Hey, it's Danny, and today I want to talk about PearlJam. But before I do, don't forget the like, and don't forget the subscribe. So in this tutorial, I'm going to look at things in a couple of different ways. We'll look at Alive as the detail in that riff, the actual way that intro riff is played note for note. It's simple, there's only a handful of notes in there, but I want to show you how I believe it is done. Similarly with Given to Fly, let's look at the exact detail in that intro. It's such a recognizable and beautiful piece for guitar work. I want to show you exactly how it's done so you can replicate that. There's a lot of fun in getting these things to sound as close to the original as possible. On the other hand, I want to show you how I've adapted a couple of songs, Daughter and Oceans, adapted to play as a solo artist, playing one guitar before the days of loop pedals. Well, they probably existed, but I didn't have one. To use Daughter as an example, something that I could quickly detune one string and get underway, rather than having to swap guitars or retune every string. And with Oceans, something that, again, that song is in an open tuning, so I wanted to avoid that, but also to introduce those bass notes. This is just a ripping riff with a great use of all those guitar tricks, sliding down the fretboard, the hammer-on, the bend, the pull-off, open strings. Love it. It's got everything in a very simple little package. 3, 4. This one is an absolute done to death classic. If you've ever played a gig in a pub, someone has come up to you and asked you for this song. More than once, no doubt. But it's still great fun. It's still a piece of guitar genius. Really, really clever use of what a lot of people call slash chords. So it's where you've got a certain chord over a certain bass note. In this case, you're at your D chord with your F sharp in the bass, which F sharp is a note that's already in D. That's an F sharp there. It's the third in D major. So it's just putting its third in the bass and then moving up to do the same with the E chord, and then later in the song, same with the F and a G. So yeah, it's just really clever. It's a clever way of taking some standard chords that you would have heard plenty of times in plenty of songs before and making something new out of them, and something really clever and effective. So let's have a look at it. That's all it is. So very, very, very simple. As the song winds up, it's a bit more strummy rather than carefully finger-picked, and you can start to hear something that adds another layer that I really appreciate, which is an open D in all of those chords. I love the theory behind this stuff, as you know, because having the D in that one, well, that's just a D chord, but having it in there, that makes an E7. D is the flattened 7th tone of an E major scale, so that's an E7 with a third in the bass. That's an F6. The D is the 6th note of F with the third in the bass. And the D is just the 5th of G, which is already in a G chord, so it's just a G with its third in the bass. Really, really clever. And then the chorus is just D, A and G. A nice little 1-4-5 back in D. I had a comment from a good friend of mine, Dean, thanks mate, who asked or suggested that I do a little lesson on PearlJam's Given to Fly. Now, I remember when this song came out, and PearlJam were kind of around their peak, and I was teaching guitar quite a lot back then, and this was a song that a lot of students came in and said, rightio, what are they doing here? How do I do this one? So let's check out Dean's request, Given to Fly. Did you remember to subscribe? Now this one, I just think this is a beautiful song over a really interesting chord progression. It's not an intuitive chord progression. There's not many other songs that have this chord progression. Oceans. So it's basically in D, but then the second chord is C sharp or D flat, whatever you want to call it, C sharp. So there's no key, there's no diatonic or major key that has two major chords right next to each other, a semitone apart like that. So that means compared to everything else that you hear on the radio or Spotify or wherever you get your music, this is going to twist your ear. Every time it goes to the next chord, it's moving away from the key that you thought you might have been in. So I love it for that reason. But another reason I love it is the bass notes. In typical PearlJam fashion, the bass player Jeff Armit moves to different notes. He's adding even more to those chords. The D ends up being over an E bass note sometimes, just for a moment, just for an eighth note, over a B, which makes it a B minor 7, over the fifth, the A, blah, blah, blah. The reason I want to show you this one is because I used to do it solo in pub gigs and try to adapt it from a band piece to a solo guitar piece. So you can YouTube it to see how PearlJam originally played it. It's very, very simple, like an open D tuning. So your first chord you can literally play by just strumming and getting an open D chord. Okay, I'm not going to show you that way because as a standard pub musician, you turn up with your one guitar and a spare set of strings, and you don't want to say, well, I'm going to do a lesser known PearlJam song. Everyone stands still and silent while I retune my entire guitar. So what I did was worked out a way that sounds fairly close. So it sounds great, it's just a D chord, the first chord, but I like to play it with the fifth in the bass just to make it nice and full. Now the C sharp chord, apparently that's all it is a C sharp sus4 to a C sharp. But listening closely, I can hear an A note in there as well. So a sharpened fifth. To me, that sounds closer. Now I don't know if that's just a harmonic on the bass or if it's something that one of the other, the second guitarist is playing, or who knows what it is, but to me, that sounds closer. So it's, hold on. Then you can go back to your D there. Then the next chord, the bass changes. So it's those again, but over an F sharp and a G sharp. So what I play is, so that's my thumb on the F sharp bass note, an F sharp minor chord with a ninth on top. So an F sharp minor 9, and then a C sharp over the G sharp bass note. So So there I've got my D chord, but over the B, as I said, the bass note. Then the next part, again, the open tuning makes it very easy, but it's not too hard to just take a C chord and drop that second finger down to your F sharp, your flat 5 note there, and then ensure that your D string is muted with the side of your third finger. Beautiful. Did you give me a like yet? Okay, for this one, and again, a great song that you may have been requested in your pub gigs many, many times, but a song that PearlJam play in an open tuning. Now, I'm not sure exactly what open tuning, but I found this one. I tried to adapt a like a standard tuning version, but then I came up with a way of basically playing it on the 4 middle strings and just dropping the A string to a G. And then using the good old 5 chord shape. So like a first finger on, well, starts on the 7th fret of the A string, and third finger on the 9th fret. So it's like, you know, whatever. But because we've dropped the A string, it becomes a 6th, and if you play the 4 middle strings, you get that sound. Restless breakfast table in an otherwise empty room. So easy, and you can slide it and you can hammer. And then when you go into the other section, which is basically an E minor, well, that G note works really well in your E minor chord anyway. Have some fun with it. Did you remember to subscribe? I hope you liked that, and I hope you liked it, and I hope you subscribed to my channel. Please leave some comments, give me some requests. I'm happy to follow your lead on these things. I'm learning about some new music from you guys out there as well. So thank you. Stay safe. Wear a mask.